Hello, it's Qualifiers here, and I have come back from a hiatus with a video review, which became a video essay, which became two short video essays / reviews, all talking about 21 Pilots' Trench. As I sat down to start writing this review, I was having trouble because I started realizing that my understanding of the music was influenced not just by the music and the lyrics and the world that 21 Pilots built around this album, but also by 21 Pilots' place in the culture. How they rose from being relative unknowns to completely ubiquitous on the radio, and how they compare and contrast to other popular alternative rock. Because whether you like this or not, music does not exist in a vacuum. Our opinions of certain things are informed by the other music that comes out around that period, the music that sets the stage for a new group like 21 Pilots. And I think that when Blurryface dropped, a lot of the backlash I saw coming against the band, there are some people who really hate this album. It mostly came not because of the album itself, but because of the context surrounding it. The thing is, in the past 2 years, almost all of the songs on the top 100 alternative chart have been about being young in some capacity, mostly about romanticizing being young. There's the new Revivalist song, which talks about being in your 20s and living reckless. And there's the old Revivalist song, which talks about how this person wishes they'd known someone when they were younger. There's the Portugal the Man song, which is essentially about acting and feeling young even though you're older. There's a series of songs about being young, ambitious, and carefree, songs like Born to Run by American authors, High Hopes by Panic at the Disco, and the list goes on and on and on. So, just for fun, I made a word cloud using the lyrics of popular alternative songs, specifically songs from bands that have just broken into the mainstream 5 to 10 years ago. I'm talking Imagine Dragons, Portugal the Man, Hozier, American authors, that kind of thing. And as you can see, the word young is actually remarkably large. 7 out of the 16 songs I looked at mentioned the words young or youth in their lyrics. And even of the ones that didn't, 3 of those had themes relating to nostalgia or adolescence. It's kind of ironic that a lot of fans of alternative rock will turn around and complain about how rap music is too repetitive and every song is about getting money. Alternative rock songs, they certainly seem obsessed with their own form of social capital. And during the Blurryface era, 21 Pilots seemed to fit snugly into this trend, at least for people who listened to their radio singles and didn't bother to dive deeper into their catalog. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm pretty sure Tyler Joseph has too much integrity to just write a song that's a ploy to cash in on the youth market. But the promoters, the radio executives, all of the people in the music industry who made those singles hits, they were explicitly trying to cash in on the youth market. And the song itself does seem very explicitly directed at people my age and younger, who are overwhelmed by new adult responsibilities and want to go back to a time when they were kids and their parents did all of that stuff for them. And I can't pretend this isn't sometimes relatable to me, but that's sort of the point. It is relatable, but it's relatable in the broadest and shallowest way possible. This song is relatable in the same way that a bad meme that says something like, "I hate Mondays" is relatable. That's a sentiment that most people have, so most people can scroll past that meme and agree with it, maybe laugh at it a little bit. But that meme is not doing any real work. It's just tapping into a feeling that already exists. Its purpose is to make you agree with it, not to make you feel deeply or to question anything or to think about anything. And when people heard 21 Pilots using trendy sounds to make alternative music about being young, addressed to their youthful fans, it became easy to dismiss them as just a small part of a much larger trend. Anyone who only has a cursory relationship with 21 Pilots through hearing their singles on the radio is going to be pretty surprised if they get a chance to dig into Trench. Because with this album, 21 Pilots both explicitly and subtly reject pop culture's obsession with youth and drama, and instead they embrace something much more mature, ambiguous, and nuanced. And it's really not a bad thing to write an alternative rock song about being young. Yeah, it's a little cliche, but you can do it well, just like you could write a good rap song about getting money. My problem with this new crop of alternative rock songs is not just that youth has become kind of a cliche, but that we've started romanticizing things about youth that really aren't so great. Maybe the most frustrating recent example of this is the song Broken by Lovely the Band. Basically, this song is about two teenagers who meet cute at a party, are attracted to each other, and decide that they're soulmates because they both feel quote-unquote broken inside. It's pretty clear in this song that both teenagers are romanticizing the other person's mental illness, and to a certain extent their own mental illness, and they think that being in a relationship can save them and heal them and will make everything better, which it won't. Spoiler alert. And it's not a bad thing to make a song about, because some teenagers do feel this way. It's an attitude that exists in our culture, and teenagers pick up on that. But the problem with this song is it seems to completely endorse and buy into the glorification of mental illness. It never provides any sort of larger perspective. It associates mental illness with things like purity and being more sensitive than other people, and it seems to completely agree that these two characters have some kind of soul bond just because they both think of themselves as quote-unquote broken. Now, compare that to the song off Trench, Neon Gravestones, which is also commenting on the glorification of mental illness, specifically suicide. This song describes and criticizes the way that some parts of modern culture tend to celebrate an artist more after their death by suicide. And instead of seeing that suicide as an avoidable tragedy, think of it as something inevitable that occurred because this person was too pure or too sensitive for the world. Think about Kurt Cobain, Ian Curtis. Neon Gravestones is a song which rejects our obsession with youth by saying that it is indeed better to fade away slowly than to burn out fast. And Tyler Joseph says that the people he really admires are the artists who have survived depression, been dedicated to life through all of the ups and downs, and are still working at 50, at 60, at 70 years old. Now, this is the kind of song that could easily come off as preachy or judgmental, but it really doesn't, thanks in large part to Tyler Joseph's vocals. Tyler Joseph sounds so vulnerable and heartfelt. It sounds like he is a politician who is trying to make a commanding and powerful speech, but the topic he's speaking on is so personal to him that he's just constantly on the verge of a breakdown. There is anger and power in Tyler Joseph's voice, but there's also this undertone of sadness and just desperation. Now, it would be really easy on a song like this to turn up the sadness to 11 and make all of the instrumentation really drippy and melancholic, or to play up the righteous anger and make a little bit of a punk anthem. But to his credit, Tyler Joseph doesn't do either of those things. Instead of being angry or sad, the instrumentation on this song is chilly and haunting. It seems to convey some of the actual mystery, creepiness, and finality of death. I love the echoing, chilly, clean pianos after the chorus and the hushed, whispery sound effects that balance them out. After Neon Gravestones, the album smoothly transitions into the song The Hype, which is one of my favorites off of Trench. And I guess technically the song falls into the category of an inspirational ballad, but it avoids most of the melodrama and cheesiness that tends to come with that territory. In fact, Tyler Joseph here is directly rejecting the big emotional appeals that usually come with a dramatic inspirational ballad. He tells you to deal with your problems by staying calm, knowing who you are, and not letting anybody else play to or manipulate your emotions. Tyler Joseph has framed this song as a letter to his younger self, which makes all the sense because Tyler is kind of fulfilling a parental role in this song. Someone with enough emotional distance from the situation and enough experience with this kind of thing himself that he's able to offer a big picture perspective and dispense a little bit of tough love. The line, "You're a terrible sight, but you'll be just fine," is definitely something I can imagine a mom or a dad saying to an over-emotional child. But I think it's the instrumentation that really brings the hype home for me. There's this element of detailed, measured warmth to it that reflects the kind of advice that Tyler has been giving on this song. I love the bright, steady, pulsing, constant synth that anchors the melody of this song, but never dominates the track and leaves Tyler Joseph plenty of room to incorporate organic instrumentation or to fill out the mix with well-placed scratches and hushed sound effects and vocal snippets. I especially like the violin that kind of sneaks into the mix about halfway through the track. It gives it a really nice sense of earned uplift. And I love how the ukulele is naturally woven in to balance against some of the more haunting electronic elements. It adds a sense of comfort and familiarity to the track and bolsters the reassuring message. This is another track where, both musically and lyrically, Tyler Joseph is rejecting bombast and drama for something a little bit more nuanced. Because that's the thing about Trench. This is an old soul album. Not just in the content it presents, which is a lot about getting older and embracing adulthood, but also in the emotions it expresses. This is an album that is very comfortable with ambiguity and intellectualism, and it rejects a lot of the melodrama that fuels a lot of modern pop songs. 'Cause that's the thing, even when popular music doesn't directly reference youth or adolescence or nostalgia, it uses drama and grandeur to try to recreate some of the intensity of youth. I think for a lot of people, myself included, the songs on the radio express a little bit of what it was like to be a teenager. When emotions were more overwhelming, you didn't know how to deal with them as well, and you can get so swept up in the moment that the past and the future seem to fall away and not really matter anymore. Trench is not about those kinds of moments. There's one particular line on Bandito where Tyler Joseph compares his brain to a tube of neon. It's bright and it's colorful, but as he says, he's recently discovered it's a heatless fire. These are songs about the heatless fire. The things that fill up our brain and color our lives, but that we don't really notice because they don't flare up and consume us. They're things that lay in the background and determine how we think about certain things and ideas. These are intellectual songs, but their intellectualness is tinged with emotion. Specifically, feelings of fear that you're not going to live the kind of life that you want to live, and a melancholy because you're aware of things ending, of finality, and of death. These are the kind of emotions that are expressed through intellectual preoccupation and obsession and habits that you just can't quite break. As Tyler Joseph says on Pet Cheetah, I go slow, I want to stop time, I sit here till I find the problem. It's about working things over in your head again and again and again until you can find some kind of way out. A great example of this kind of intellectualism by way of emotion is on the song Morph, where Tyler Joseph is preoccupied with death. He wonders if the correct response to the existence of death is to find religion and be able to embrace the idea of people going up to heaven, or whether it's simply resigning yourself to the fact that we're all going to go under the ground and we're basically part of the earth, or is it putting his faith in some kind of scientific miracle which will let him avoid death eventually. In the end, he concludes that you can't really escape death. There's no way above, under, or around it, as he says, but he thinks that maybe he can stop himself from getting too fixated on the end of his life by, as he says, morphing into something new. And I took this as a metaphor for artistic creation, that by picturing yourself as a different person or a different animal or coming up with a whole new world to explore, you can protect yourself against the starkness and the bleakness of some of the realities of this world. And you can defend yourself against a kind of depression or numbness that comes from being too aware and too afraid of your own mortality. Speaking of world building as a coping mechanism, there is a whole fundamental aspect of this album that's really interesting and that I haven't touched on at all in this review. Namely, Trench isn't just a collection of songs, it's a concept album. A genre that somehow simultaneously manages to be one of my favorite and one of my least favorite modes of expression. I thought that delving into Trench as a concept album and whether it works or doesn't work in that mold deserved its own video. And while I'm notoriously terrible at predicting these things, right now it seems like the video is going to be a little under 10 minutes and will probably be released later next week. Overall, really liked this album. Would probably give it a light 8 out of 10 if I were rating it. Look down in the description box for other 21 Pilots hot takes. And I hope that everyone has a great weekend. I'll see you next time.